Hang on just a second.
Yeah, I just got a message
Now
that it's
streaming
now
live.
streaming live.
And I'm just going to hit record on Zoom as well.
Yep, so you're now live.
You're ready to go.
All right, good morning all. At 11:01, I'm going to call the April 10, 2020 meeting of the Board of Selectmen to order and read the following prologue. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Southborough Board of Selectmen will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the Town of Southborough's website at https://www.southboroughtown.com/ For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch or participate in the meeting may do so in the following manner by finding the meeting at https://www.southboroughtown.com/remote meetings. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on Southborough's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. And with that, I think I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Purple, for an explanation of why we're here this morning.
Thank you. So first of all, my apologies that we are here this morning. There was one additional issue under the COVID-19 update that we needed to talk about, which specifically had to do with the governor's COVID relief bill that he had signed and the possibility of extending the due dates for personal property and real estate taxes from May 1st to June 1st. I know Brian Ballantyne is with us this morning. I think I'd just like to bring him in just to, this is his bailiwick, and I think that he can probably do a better job than I can of explaining it.
All right, Ms. Hale, you can go ahead and do that, and hopefully Mr. Ballantyne can join us.
I assume you can hear me at least, correct?
We can hear you. We can't see you. We can see your name, or at least I can see your name on the screen.
That's more than enough, I guess. And I
All
put on
right.
a good shirt and everything.
Brian, why don't you go ahead and explain what the new legislation is and what the impact is potentially on the town of Southborough?
Sure. So the new legislation, that was a bunch of things, as you know. And the other night, unfortunately, I didn't hit the panic button fast enough to do this a few nights ago. But so it allows a couple of things that don't make sense for the town, and a couple of things that I think other towns and cities will be adopting widespread throughout Massachusetts. So one of those things is, and they're really two separate things, but one of them is extending the due dates for personal property and real estate taxes from May 1st to June 1st. So that's the first one. The second one is, and it seems a little quirky, but is extending a grace period for payment of taxes from June 1st through June 30th. It doesn't actually change the due date to June 30th, which is the quirky part. It just says if you pay within that month, you won't be charged any fees or interest. If you pay on July 1st, you go back to June 1st for a due date. So is there a cost to this to the town? Yes. However, I think it's minimal. And I think considering the times that I would recommend adopting this. I looked up the last few years of revenue in June, and it was probably about anywhere between $3,000 to $5,000 we collected in interest in fees for that period. So assuming we probably won't get that money if we adopt this, but again, I think in the overall scheme of things, It makes sense from what we've heard from the public. And I would just go ahead and support voting that as is.
All right, any? And basically, Brian, what, I'm sorry, go ahead, Dan.
No, yeah, you were frozen there for a while. If you said something I didn't hear it.
I didn't either.
I'm sorry. Basically was just putting it to the board if they have any questions for Brian on these two elements.
Sounds reasonable to me.
Me too.
Oh,
Yeah, I don't have any
Byron?
questions. I would just move that we support both both requests.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. All in favor? Healy, aye.
Kalenda, aye.
Stivers, aye.
Ratio I.
All right.
And Marty, before you continue, just to let the board know, so Brian has,
So with that, we have extended the due date. Did I freeze again?
you did.
All right, maybe I need to speak slower.
Or a
Anyway,
faster internet connection.
Happen again, Marty.
so just so it's clear for folks, oh, darn.
I
Says
think
my,
it's clear. I mean, is there, I don't know if there's any confusion. There's none on my part, but I think Brian explained it really, quite well. Did you want to recap it, Marty? Is that what you're looking to do?
I was going to recap it, but if I'm freezing up, then if it is otherwise clear, then I'm moving on to the other things Brian wanted to talk about.
Yep.
Yep.
All right,
Brian, was there
Brian?
anything else?
This is like catching snippets and bits here.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's two other items I just want to, and it's 60 seconds worth. One is I just want to clear up confusion from the other night for the hiring freeze. Just want to clarify that the town accountant's position, we did post that and we're going ahead to fill that as of July 1st. I just wanted to make that clear so there's no surprises on the board's end. And the other thing is my budget, since we're talking about treasury stuff today, my budget, I've talked with the town administrator and we agree that I will retract my additional position for next year and delay it a year. I think with the budgetary, the budgetary atmosphere out there, it doesn't make a lot of sense at this time. So, so as we update you in a few weeks on the budget, you'll see that change in there and you'll probably see some other changes. So just want to make you aware of that.
Thank you, Brian.
Thanks.
Thank you, Brian.
All right, does anybody have any questions about those two things that Brian just touched on?
Nope.
Okay, is there anything else relating to the new legislation and the budget that we have to consider, Mark?
No, there's nothing else at this point. That was actually the centerpiece of what I wanted to talk about for the COVID stuff last time. So no, there is nothing else at this point. The governor, the governor's economic advisors, that team was supposed to meet last Tuesday. They had technical difficulties. They canceled the meeting. Fully expect the governor to come back with a revised FY21 budget at some point. I think that we're simply going to drop anchor and wait to see, what some of these other things unfold. So when the governor issues a new budget, I assume that's going to affect our local aid. I know that, as Brian just mentioned, he's making some revisions in terms of our local receipts. There's going to be a gap that we're going to have to close again. And how we do that, we'll have some recommendations for the board. And then the question is going to be, do we want to have a plan to go further and to close, to further reduce the tax impact of an FY21 budget? We can have those discussions at the next meeting on the 21st.
Okay, appreciate that. I think we all know that sort of discussion is coming.
Hey, Marty,
Yeah,
one more point I'd like to add. I was part earlier today of an MWRA advisory board call, and you may hear about the fact the MWRA is working to freeze or defer debt payments on MWRA water and sewer loans. They're still working through that. As best I can tell, that really doesn't impact Southborough at this point, but I will follow up with Mark and Karen about that. But if you hear about that, that's going on for many communities who have loans. There are like 150 of those loans out there that will help people with the short-term cash flows. And the details are still to be finalized, but that sort of seems to be headed in that direction.
Okay, I'm going to move on now to item 3 on the agenda, which is other matters properly before the board. And my understanding is that we have at least one matter that one of the members wants to bring up.
I do, please. Thank you. I want to piggyback on something Marty had brought up at a prior meeting. This will be brief, 2 minutes tops. I'd like Aldo to review the process under which the public access to Chestnut Hill Farm was closed. My main concern is that the taxpayers of Southborough spent $5 million for the right of public access as referenced under the purposes in the conservation restriction, and it was denied without the consultation of the grantee, which is the Conservation Commission, which was required under the assignability number 4. On page 13, it talks about the management plan and specifically says, and I quote, "Grantor reserve the right to close the trails from time to time for the purposes of maintaining public safety or to protect agricultural crops or wildlife in consultation with the grantee." That didn't happen. Also, the trustees have said in an email from April 6th that our responsibility at our farms is to protect and manage our food access work. So all individuals, staff, visitors, those who purchase, enjoy and eat food we produce, and those who participate in our farm-based education and engagement programs are safe when they come to our properties. But our responsibility is to the taxpayers to make sure that their rights of public access are protected as well. I've walked Chestnut Hill Farm. I've never had an issue or ran into staff at any time. So I can't imagine if they can provide a safe access for customers to be able to come to the CSA and make purchases, that the same can't be done for citizens wishing to exercise their right of public access. So I would just like a level of confidence that our citizens' rights are being protected through the CR. And I think if we can get Aldo to give an opinion, if the process was was done correctly, or if there were additional steps that should have been done. I think this property is a little different than some of their other properties. That, you know, the CR was for passive recreation. That was one of the main purposes of it. So I would just like the board to consider asking Aldo to take a look at this and see if this was done correctly, that our rights are protected.
So I'll just chime in if I may. I think it's a good idea to have it reviewed. Do we need to pay a lawyer to do it, or is that something that Mark and his staff can review first with, with whomever, he thinks is necessary? And then if he can determine that it was done either correctly or incorrectly, we can have that discussion. If he's not able to and needs a professional legal review, then maybe we pay for Aldo to do that. That's my only thought. We still do the review.
That's perfect.
Maybe we can, you talked about the taxpayers, and maybe we don't need a legal, professional legal analysis of it. That's my only thought.
And
Dan, I
that's
agree. In
fine
some
too.
ways, having a lawyer reach out to him escalates the process a little bit. And maybe if Mark or others can point out to him, maybe they weren't aware of that. I don't know, they should be, but if they weren't, we could point out to him that's a requirement, didn't happen, and we'd like to have our Concom weigh in on that again with him and see if they can persuade him.
Yep.
I agree with all that. Mark, you've already reached out to them once as a result of it having been brought up at a previous meeting, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And I've gotten a couple of responses. So I'm happy to take a look through the CR and I can, and I know Lisa's probably more familiar with it than a lot of people. So I can look through it along with Vanessa and get some guidance from Lisa, and then can just check the approach with Aldo before I bring that, have those continued discussions with the trustees or with the
Yeah,
state.
and I will just say that I've taken a look at the same language that Lisa did, and as far as I can tell, she's absolutely right. That a very clear process that's laid out in the restriction was not followed, and that with follow-up from Mr. Purple, he forwarded us a letter that he got from them. They didn't reference the process. Again, the other thing that the conservation restriction points out is that the town has remedies if the trustees violate this, and that might be a question for Aldo. I mean, this goes back to what I said when I first brought it up. No time is more important to have access to outside space than right now, and for reasons that don't make a whole lot of sense to me, the trustees are denying the taxpayers of Southborough access to that property, and we may have a remedy for that.
Okay.
That was it for me. Thank you.
All right, any other business anyone wants to bring up?
Just a motion to adjourn.
Second,
All in favor, Healy, aye.
Galenda, aye.
Stivers, aye.
Ratio I.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Stay safe,
you.
everybody.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Take care.